we're crazy about Bob Marley. You and I know you're part of Bob Marley too, right? All that love you get all over the world from people. That's right from Bob, but at the same time, you give us a little piece of Bob Marley and Al Anderson, right? Because you're part of that. You were part of that. So I want to ask you this: we're just so happy and blessed to have you here with us. Thank you, Mr. Al Anderson.
Oh, thank
Yep.
you
Thank you.
for the kind words, and it's nice to be with you, brothers. And first and foremost, Feliz Navidad
Feliz Navidad. And
and Happy New Year to all my beautiful friends in San Diego
yep.
and in Latin America and
Oh,
America. God bless us all.
thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you.
Salud.
Salud.
Salud. Saluda.
That's a piña colada or a mojito.
No, our lead singer, we were in Puerto Rico,
Mm-hmm.
his home, so he gave me some Don Q, some of his favorite rum, and we're just
Ooh.
bringing in the new year with some nice Puerto Rican rum.
You just put it
Mhm.
plain on the cob. No, 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 nothing else.
No, a little bit of orange, a little bit of lime, and a little bit of ginger beer,
All
and
right.
straight shots.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. All right. That's the best way. All right, Mr. Alt. So we're gonna start with these questions. Are you okay with just throw like kind of the first two is like when you met Bob and right, and then Natty Dread sessions. But after that, we have like kind of just random questions. Are you okay with that?
It's all freestyle. Help yourself.
Freestyle.
I'm a servant.
All right. So, how was your first impression when you met Bob Marley?
The reason why I met Bob Marley was there was a friend of mine named Paul Kossoff from Free.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great guitarist. Um, he played in a really popular rock group that Island had signed, and I was always playing guitar with him,
Mm-hmm.
talking about like amplification and guitars. He was just a beautiful soul, and they called Island Records, Chris Blackwell. They called him first,
Mm-hmm.
and he had been drinking a fair share, and he wasn't in the position that he wanted to go do a session because he was enjoying himself at home.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave me the opportunity to substitute for him. So Paul Kossoff was my introductory to
Mm-hmm.
the Nazi Dread album.
Mm-hmm.
And he played Catch a Fire and Burnin' before I had gone to Basing Street Studios to do the recording of the Nazi Dread album.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't familiar with the Wailers. He introduced me to the Wailers.
Mm-hmm.
Peter, Bob, and Bunny. It was Catch a Fire and Burnin'. He only played like small pieces of it so that I would have an idea when I got to the studio to do the Nazi Dread session.
Mm-hmm.
I would have a direction from which they were going in, at
Mm-hmm.
that time. And if you listen to Nazi Dread doesn't sound pretty much anything like Catch a Fire and Burn It.
Mm-mm. Nope. It's
No.
yep.
It was a revolution of sound at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Um by the time you record the Natty Dread sessions, you knew about like reggae at least.
No, I knew of Johnny Nash, and I knew of Jimmy Cliff and Dennis Brown and groups like Matumbi.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
those
knew Bob Marley? Bob Marley name? Not yet.
no. I knew
Wow.
I knew Oswald,
Mm-hmm.
Delroy Washington, Dennis Brown, Gerger Isaacs, these guys, especially Jimmy Cliff and Alton Ellis, they were really popular in England.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, Bob's popularity was on the pirate radio stations that were on the weekends and the after hours.
Mm-hmm.
Late at night, you could hear pirate stations in London where they were playing the heaviest music in the world, like reggae you've never heard before, directly from Jamaica before any other country because of the sovereignty between
Mhm.
Jamaica and England.
Mhm.
So I wasn't familiar with Bob at all, and then I got this opportunity through Paul Costa for free to go and do the Natty Dread album at Basin Street Studio. So they sent me a mini cab. I went down to the studio, which was Basin Street Studios in Basin Street, London,
Mhm.
and I just plugged into. I went straight into the studio, plugged into an amp, and just asked the engineer, please play something that I can hear that
Mhm.
he wants me to play on top of. So
Yep.
I kind of produced my guitar parts on the fly. It's kind of like
Mhm.
freestyle, you know, coming into the studio, not knowing anybody, not knowing what to expect,
Yep.
and just play. And
Yep.
that's what I did.
So
And
Mr. O, the first time for you like playing reggae, it was with Bob Marley, like your first time ever, like kind of to jam with reggae, like rhythm or music. It was like your first time ever.
no, before then was I Sus with Delroy Washington and Oswald.
Hmm. You work
It
with
was
them,
a
right?
Sus album. Before I worked with Island, I was working with Richard Branson
Oh, okay. Yeah.
and had a #1 with Delroy Washington. There was an album called I Sus,
Mm-hmm.
and the band members were pre Oswald,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's the reggae I knew first was Delroy Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, I knew Johnny Nash and Jimmy, but I didn't know Bob. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know his music. I didn't know his personality, his songwriting. I knew nothing of this artistic individual. And I learned it from doing his first record, which was Natty Dread. I
Mm-hmm.
had an idea and that he was a fantastic songwriter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um. Yeah. So, but what I hear or read, then Bob invites you to the Natty Dread tour. But before that, there was a stop in Delaware. Is that true? I read that like on the
Yeah,
website.
he was living part time in Delaware, um, and he lived with his half sister Pearl and two half brothers Richie
Mm-hmm.
and Aunt and Mama B. And
Mm-hmm.
so we made a stop there for some length of time. I got to know him better because we would sit down and just play.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was a true songwriter, singer songwriter. He always had some really interesting things to say and play on top of chords. So
Mm-hmm.
he was very poetic, and at the same time he was very musical in his own right.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
stayed there for a while, and then when it was time to go to Jamaica, we left his mother and his brother and sister and went to Jamaica.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you on different like interviews, you say you mentioned that you didn't get any money from like live audio recordings like the Lyceum. But how about the video recordings? For example, Santa Barbara, there's a famous like solo guitar from you. Or Dortmund, right? Dortmund, like the camera is always in you on Dortmund, the concerts that we all know. But how about when there was like a fully recorded like video recording for that? You were getting paid for that too, or no?
Um, we worked for slave labor. We were slaves to the record company. Our deal with Bob was we would take all of our tour money and donate it to Tough Gong Studios because Bob needed to build a studio ASAP, as fast as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So all of us decided to take whatever we were earning and give some to Bob because he couldn't be responsible for everything because he didn't have the finances at that time until they released the Natty Dread album.
Mhm.
When they released the Natty Dread album, that's when the money came.
Mhm.
And we were giving all of our money and all of our loyalty to Bob, and especially Chris Blackwell from Island Records, who took advantage of the Jamaican Society of Musicians
Mhm.
by not giving them their rights, not giving them contracts for all the recordings, all the tours they recorded, everything that you hear today. Bob Marley's band never got paid for. Not 1 cent. Slave labor.
Not even like royalties from albums, like nowadays. Not even that, or now after.
Honestly, after Rostam Vibration, there was so much money after there.
Oh,
They
okay.
felt sorry for us, and they used to send us to the accountant and the crooked lawyer. They would never show us statements. They would know us. They would never show us anything that we were working for. They would just give us a little more money after the tour. But they never was. There was never statements. What is a statement? A statement is an accounting from the record company of how many records were sold, how many points were distributed between the record company and the artist. Most artists in the group, like if you say the Beatles or Coldplay or, groups like this, Foo Fighters, they all share a percentage of the gross. And unfortunately, Bob Marley had a really bad CEO who
Mhm.
was crooked. He knew we had bad lawyers, we had bad accounting, and they were sued for racketeering. Bob Marley and the Wailers accountant and their lawyer were sued for stealing money from Bob Marley and his band.
Mhm.
And
So,
we won
Bob
the law.
Marley in that time, how he felt about his own band, like about you, like he couldn't do anything. Marley, like Bob, like it wasn't on
Un-
him.
Unfortunately, we had a guy named Don Taylor. He was kind of like he was a lieutenant in the United States Army. He was a dangerous guy. He knew military tactics. He knew how to separate and divide us from the loyalty that we had with Bob. He knew how to separate that. And unfortunately, he got most of the attention of Bob's success when it was the band and
Mhm.
Bob himself. We had a bad manager. Every group needs, every group of musicians, this is really important for you listening musicians out there. Always have somebody that's interested in your career that is straight. First of all, they're going to tell you the truth, they're going to give you the rights, and you deserve a percentage of everything that you're responsible for when it comes to producing
Mhm.
any music or producing anything or the copyright to anything that you've invented. You deserve all the rights to the production of everything.
Mhm.
Like like live at Lyceum. Um, I was having problems with my equipment, and I would have never known that there was going to be a live recording if I didn't try to remedy the fact that all of my pedals and my stuff that I use live for Bob, nothing was working. I don't know why. It just wasn't, nothing was working. So
Mhm.
Third World opened up for us at the Lyceum. Third
Mm,
World.
the world. Okay.
Yeah, so Catcore had a really cool pedal from
Mhm.
Electro Harmonics. It was like a phaser. I believe it was a phaser.
Mhm.
And I went out to the bus to borrow it from him because I needed some sort of processing,
Mhm.
something to give me a vibe an album that we were getting ready to do a live album. But we didn't. Nobody in the band knew it was going to be a live album.
Mm-hmm.
We saw cables, we saw microphones. We thought it was going to be just shorts for the BBC,
Mm-hmm.
for the British Broadcasting System. They would just take snippets and use it as promotion. What I found out by going to the bus and getting that uh, processor from Cat Core, I saw a studio that said Rolling Stones Mobile Studio.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mobile studio outside the Lyceum. Nobody in the band knew that we were being recorded.
Wow.
As a record company exec, or the execs or A&R people that work for record company people, rightfully, especially in England, where the rights of human beings
Mm-hmm.
are very, much more than Jamaica and even in America. They're
Wow.
supposed to come to you and let you know, first of all, you're being recorded. Second of all, you're producing, you're part of the production. So
Yep.
you get the rights from the recording and you get the rights of production along with the company and the artist.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Blackwell never told us we were being recorded. So I went into the control booth, which was the Rolling Stones mobile studio, and there was Steve Smith and Chris Blackwell sitting down, getting prepared to record the Live at Lyceum album.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And then I said to him, I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nobody knows that you're recording us." He says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "What does that have to do with the fact that you're illegally recording us?" He said, "You better go and get on stage and don't say anything to anybody." And then Bob's manager came to me and said that if you say anything to anybody about this live recording, there's repercussions and I'll get you fired. So I didn't say anything, but I knew we were legally being recorded where our rights weren't going to be benefited for our future.
Mm-hmm.
And it went on like that the whole career of Family Man and Carly from the early days till they passed. They got nothing for their contribution. And it wasn't Bob. It was the fact that, Aston Barrett made a big mistake by suing the Marley family. He should have never gone to court. He should have waited his turn to get what he deserved because
Mm-hmm.
he had already signed the contract with Rita and Chris Blackwell, taken in advance. And we as a band never knew that he signed an agreement for several £100,000
Yep.
and we didn't receive anything. He kept it all himself with his girlfriend. So there's a lot of wrong that went on, and that's the explanation. Bad management, crooked record company, crooked lawyer, crooked attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Attorney meaning lawyer and also accounting. Now the lawyer has more power than the accountant.
Mm-hmm.
The accountant just takes care of the numbers. He hides the numbers. The lawyer is the one that makes all the wrong moves. Like he's the one that becomes the slave master.
Mm-hmm.
Understand? And so what happened was he got disbarred as a lawyer that represent Bob Marley because of when he went to court for racketeering, he was found liable for theft. So David Steinberg was Bob Marley's lawyer who
Mm-hmm.
was disbarred. They took his bar associated exam, which made him a lawyer. They took that away from him. So he's no more a lawyer
A lawyer.
because,
Yep.
because he stole from Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the accountant was too old to prosecute. He was in like his late 80s, early 90s. So they didn't really prosecute Bob Marley's accountant because he was so old that they should have gone to jail for what they did.
You say
Anybody
he
else
was
would have
around 80? 80?
80 plus.
Wow.
Yeah. How he could remember all the numbers that Bob Marley and the Wailers were making was a miracle. That's why they had a really crooked lawyer like David Steinberg. It was David Steinberg was Bob's lawyer, and Marvin Zold was his accountant.
Hmm.
And they got busted for stealing from Bob Marley and the Wailers royalties. Racketeering is called.
Yep.
And that's where it went wrong. And all of that was because of Don Taylor, Bob's manager. He made it so that it would be a
Until
conflict.
Gabon, right? Until Gabon.
Oh man, he got
You
his
knew
there.
about that fight
I was
back
there.
then?
I was right there. He got beat up, man. They wasted him, man. They almost beat him to death. It was sad. But that's what happens when you're a thief. He introduced Bob to his lawyer and his accountant. So if Bob wanted to sue Don or the accountant or lawyer, it wouldn't be admissible because it would be a conflict of interest from Don executing Bob as, you
Hmm.
know, the introduction. So this was all fixed. It was all fixed to take advantage of the success of Bob Marley and the Wailers in their future, and even still today, they
Yeah.
are they are taking the original members off of recordings. And why they're doing that, I have no idea. Because the funny thing is that for me, I played this music for 50 years. I played with Bob Marley, the father of Bob Marley and the Wailers. The music that he made and wrote. And
Hmm.
then all these people are playing his music, and they're copying Carly, Family Man, Tyrone, Wire, the I Treason, Junior Marvin, and myself. They're like a carbon copy of what we used to perform. Why are they doing that when they have the ability and the finances to produce their own music, write their own music? But they're taking us, Bob Marley's musicians, off of recordings and putting other people on, and taking advantage of the fact that who is left as an original Wailer to perform the songs that they perform with Bob. Bob's wishes was, don't have anybody imitate me, because he hated imitators.
Hmm.
Bob hated anybody that was going to imitate him. So there was a lot of people who tried to do that we supported.
Yeah.
And that's Rita didn't like that. The family didn't like that either. So we made some bad choices. And the bad choice was having somebody
So you
imitating Bob.
you you as a band, the whole members didn't like the main singer to kind of imitate Bob. You as a band didn't like that, like nobody, like Junior, you, even like Carly,
Junior,
Austin.
no,
You guys
Junior,
didn't like that.
Junior was the one that was imitating Bob, and Rita and I Tree didn't like it. So they decided not to work with us anymore.
Mm.
Junior just fell in love with Bob's everything, and he decided that he would try to be the new Bob Marley for the band. Didn't happen. If you listen to all the records, Romantic Warrior, all the records that Junior wrote, and
Mhm.
people think I'm putting him down. I'm just making an explanation of why it wasn't looked on as a great thing. Trying to imitate Bob Marley is impossible. So
You
be
knew that
yourself. I knew it.
when he passed away. You knew it was over for the band, for everything was like kind of over, like because you guys were on the top of the world by after Uprising. You guys were the number one tour, like the best
There
band
was
on tour in that time. You
there
you
was
knew it was sad for you. Like, why is
he
this
told
happening?
he told me before he passed he didn't want anybody to imitate him. And then he said, play your own songs, write your own songs, but honor the music that we made together. And I promised him that if there would be a possibility that I could do that with anybody, we would. The alternative to Bob was Peter Tosh, because he was still alive,
Mm.
and Jacob Miller.
To
And
put them on with the Wailers, to put them as the main
yeah,
performers
yeah,
with the Wailers.
maybe whether that was the alternative, and Garnet Silk was a possibility, which would have been a great opportunity. He was super,
Mm-hmm.
but it never happened because you know we got the singer that was singing the songs and writing the songs, which was Junior Marvin.
Mm-hmm.
None of the records like ID and Romantic Warrior, none of them have been recognized. But the ID album got a Grammy nomination in the late 90s.
ID album.
So the ID album got a Grammy nomination.
You were with the band in that time still? 19. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, I was.
Okay. All right.
So you had Tyrone Downey, Earl Wirelindo, Carrot Jarrett from Third World, Mikey Boo Richards, Family Man. That was the group after Carly was assassinated.
Mm.
They killed our drummer. They killed Carlton Barrett
You
because
were at the funeral. I knew you were a good friend with him. You say he's your favorite Wailer. You went to his funeral.
no, I didn't go to his funeral, but I saw him in front of his house laying in a pool of blood. After he got shot, we were all there. They assassinated the drummer because he never signed a contract with anybody. He was eligible for more money than he's on everything from Catch a Fire, Burning, everything. He's
Carly's
on
on
all.
everything.
Carly's on everything. Carly was he was the most beloved of the band.
Mhm.
Everybody, he was number one because he was so gifted and talented that he just couldn't be stopped as a drummer.
He,
Everybody
he
loved him.
he looked like shy but humble. Like very. He was shy or no? He wasn't that shy. No.
Ah,
You can look that on the photos, right? Like he's
he was a lion, man. He was just he was a lion. When he was hungry, don't mess with him, man. He
a
was
lion with the girls.
no, he was a romantic. He always he wasn't a playboy. No, he wasn't
Mm-mm.
like myself. I always had a girlfriend. I always had somebody I was in love with. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a Casanova. No, he wasn't that type.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, cool story. I read two cool stories from a Mantla concert that you broke your guitar. Is it that true? Um,
A mandolin?
a Mantla like festival concert. This is in on Boston, 1979. You broke your guitar. There's I read that in a website on BobMarley.com.
No, I never broke my guitar. I was doing a tour with Junior Marvin and the Wailers, and he broke my guitar.
Mm-hmm.
He walked by my guitar and wasn't happy. It's weird. He just broke right at the Norva Theater. Everybody in the band was there. They saw it. And me and him don't get along. To put it short, we were never friends. Never. My friends were Carly, Tyrone, Wire. These were the guys that I resonated with because Earl Chinna Smith, these were professionalists,
Yeah.
like Supercat. They were Supercats, and I stayed with them. All the nonsense, I didn't pay attention to any of that because I
Yeah.
know that the most important thing was to be loyal to Bob's music, and I was a servant. I didn't want to be a superstar. I slept on the floor of Hope Road. I didn't have food. I had nothing. I had humble beginnings, and when I got to Jamaica, nobody put me up. I didn't have any money. There was no food for me. I lived like the poorest people in Jamaica lived, and I was thankful that I had something to look forward to because I knew that Natty Dread would make all the difference in the world for Bob and everybody else that's on that recording. And it
Mm-hmm.
did. It
Mm-hmm.
did everything that you could expect a very successful spiritual album to resonate with the world.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think, like the question you said, like there was Peter Tosh was still alive, and you had guys like Inner Circle had a great singer,
Mm-hmm.
Jacob Miller,
Jake Miller, yeah.
and he wanted to stretch out and do different recordings. He just didn't want to play with one group of people. He wanted to do his thing too because he's got a lot of recordings that the group that he was working with isn't on all of them, but they're on the majority. And I think that they're an incredible group. And
Yep.
it's just the fact that Jacob was still alive and Peter Tosh was alive. Garnet Silk was alive. And those were the three guys that the Wailers had a possibility to have something with in terms of recording.
Mm-hmm.
Because, Jacob, Peter, Garnet Silk wrote, they were great writers and great poets. So
Mm-hmm.
that you always want to be working with a great singer-songwriter that has a concept of poetry and spirituality.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we've been able to manifest that pretty much until Bob's passing.
Yep. Um. Yeah. There's also a cool story from Oakland that you invite Ronnie Wood from the Rolling Stones in Oakland, and he played with Bob like a few songs. There's a video from that, like Oakland. It's on YouTube. What happened? Can you tell us the story?
Um, the Rolling Stones used to come to a place called My Father's Place in Long Island, and
Hmm.
it was Epi Epstein's club, and a lot of stars would go there. It was on Long Island, real close to New York,
Hmm.
and people would go out there and have a smoke and listen to Dennis Brown, all the big hit Jamaican, Pablo Moses.
It was like a high class place.
No, no, no. It was on the beach. It was roots.
Oh, okay, okay,
It was
okay.
very, very roots. Um, and so that's where everybody um, would come in and get a taste of really good roots rock reggae music. You see Jimmy Cliff there, Mighty
Hmm.
Diamonds, all the bands that were really big in the 80s and late 70s, they were playing at My Father's Place. This was Epi Epstein's club. The Rolling
Hmm.
Stones go there avidly. They used to go there, have a smoke, party with the Jamaicans. Because they love Jamaica, because England and Jamaica got something going on.
Hmm.
And Ronnie was really cool. He had a club called Woody's in
In
Miami.
Jamaica
In Miami.
or in Miami? Yeah. Hmm.
And when he joined the band after he left Rod Stewart, everybody was into reggae in England pretty much. The punks were into reggae.
Oh,
All the underground pirate radio stations, it was all about reggae, and then later on jungle.
this is
But
late 70s when the.
mid 70s, early 70s, the pirate stations were, late 60s, early 70s. Pirate stations were the stations that didn't have authorization to transmit music because there was some heavy words being said, a lot of curse words,
Yeah.
you know.
So
And England had like a big prescription of people that were tuning in. And if you could have a song on a pirate radio station that was a hit, that when it came out mainstream, you had a hit song. You had promotion for it from the pirate radio stations.
yeah, yeah.
All the DJs were playing all the hip stuff. And,
You think that in that time, like let's say during Catch a Fire Burning, that happened? Like Chris Blackwell kind of throw music in that pirate station or Bob Marley, like for a commercial thing in the future.
it wasn't Chris Blackwell, it was the DJs.
Oh, okay, okay.
It was the disc jocks and the rappers who that's what they wanted to rap on top of, or they would just play like songs from Catch a Fire and Burn It that weren't getting like BBC attention or ATV in
Hmm.
England. they weren't playing a lot of rock steady music on television and radio. It was the pirate stations.
Mm-hmm.
And, the biggest song was "The Harder They Come."
Mm-hmm.
I can see clearly now with Johnny Nash. These songs were really big on the BBC and the Top of the Pops. We didn't have that uh, success at the time, but that came later.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, about the Ronnie Wood story. So he was your friend before the survival tour, right? Because
Yeah, I used
he.
to go. Yeah, I used to go to Woody's, and that's after. But before, Ron Wood was a super cool guy. He's a great artist, great bass player, good singer, good songwriter. He's the complete package as a guitarist,
Mm-hmm.
and he became friends with all of us. Um, he was invited by Bob and the band to come on and just play.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much after that, the Rolling Stones um, had their Rolling Stones record company, and they were looking for Jamaican artists to sign to Rolling Stones Records.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I introduced Peter Tosh to Johann Bogoda, their lawyer, and Keith, Mick, and Ronnie were quintessential at getting Peter Tosh signed to Rolling Stones Records.
Mm-hmm.
Along with Herbie Miller and Lee Jaffe and myself. Um, we kept telling the Stones that this guy was a great talent and that he would be a force in the musical world, and it would be of interest for them to sign him onto a contract. He got signed to the contract and he went on tour. How many people get signed to a Rolling Stones record, lucrative record deal? They pay for all your outstanding with CBS because we owed CBS probably 300,000 at that time. So they paid all the bills and then advanced some money to get himself together for a Rolling Stones tour. This is very rare. So salute to the Rolling Stones every time. I got nothing but love for the Stones because what
Yep.
they have for black music, they did the same thing for Stevie Wonder.
Mm.
They took Stevie Wonder on tour and boom, everybody around the world knew who Stevie Wonder was. Stevie Wonder was well known in
Yep.
the soul department, but when he toured with the Rolling Stones, he became even more popular and sold more records.
Mm-hmm. So
So the Stones do good things.
about the Rolling Stones, there's at least like three pictures from like Mick Jagger and Bob. Like Bob used to go to a lot of live concerts from you guys, from Bob Marley and the Wailers. Mick Jagger was there like all the time. You remember see him on like on backstage,
I,
Mick
s- I
Jagger,
remember I remember him and I believe Ronnie.
Ronnie
Yeah, it
Wood,
was I believe Ronnie and Mick would they came to the what's that place?
Madison
Madison
Square
Square Garden.
Garden. Mhm.
Came to Madison Square Garden and they were there also. Paul McCartney and George Harrison came also.
Yeah. Oh,
They,
really?
yeah, they wanted to make music with Bob Marley. They thought that
So
Bob Marley was
Paul McCartney and George Harrison were there.
they were there. Don't ever pass a joint to Paul McCartney because he will not return it. He will smoke every piece of your joint.
Yeah.
I passed him my joint and never got it back.
Yeah.
But I sat there with George and talked to George and Bob talked to Paul. But from what I understood is that they wanted to do some recording with Bob Marley along with one. I had an opportunity to meet John Lennon and Yoko at Steve Paul's scene, which was a small club in the village of New York.
Bob Marley sent you actually a good a fan from the from our page. He's from Spain. He was asking that if you meet John Lennon, that Bob Marley sent you there with him.
Yes, he did.
Oh,
He did.
really? Can you tell us
He
the
did.
story?
Bob didn't know John like Peter didn't know the Beatles so much either. He might have known their name, but he didn't know their faces and didn't know their music. And Bob didn't know any of the Rolling Stones music. He couldn't tell you any songs outside of maybe Satisfaction, something like that.
So Marley didn't care about the Rolling Stone music, but the Rolling Stone music knew Bob Marley, and they used to go to the
It's
shows,
not that
right?
it's not that Bob didn't care about the Rolling Stones music. He wasn't familiar with the Stones sound because
Oh,
the
okay,
Stones have their own sound,
okay.
and the Beatles have their own sound. Bob wanted to meet John, but he didn't know John, and Bob is very shy in a lot of ways when it comes to meeting people.
Mm.
Once you get to meet him and know him, he's not shy, but he shies away from responsibilities that if he can not do certain things that he doesn't want to do, he won't do it, and he'll have someone else do it, like me. I met
Mhm.
John and Yoko at Steve Paul's scene. They bought me a tea, and I sat. And John said that he wanted to do an album with Bob representing rebel music because he loves the direction that Natty Dread
Wow,
was going in,
wow,
and it never happened. It's very unfortunate, but Bob Marley had the opportunity to be like fourth Beatle: Paul, George, John, and Bob Marley in the studio. And I'm
wow.
sure they probably had guys like Lee Sklar or the Wailers or these kind of guys. There was a lot of
That
session guys
that didn't
that
happen because of Bob Marley passed away, or it was more like a legal thing. It was
it just
Bob
never.
Marley.
It's one of those odd things that you would think would come together, never come together
Mm, okay.
because I think Bob would have loved to go in the studio with John Lennon because they were very similar.
Wow.
They're very similar with songwriting, just prolific, amazing. You know,
You
it's a
think
shame
that
that it
it
never
was
happened.
gonna be like hard, like two big egos, like two big guys doing the same
No,
thing?
no. When Bob is in the studio, that's when you get 100% of Bob Marley,
Wow.
1 on 1. You get 100%. It's not football. It's not anything that he really likes. It's not weed or nothing. It's music. You get 100% of what he represents musically, and I learned that the hard way.
That's why the Wailers call him Skipper. He was like doing everything, right? Like Skipper.
The
Yeah.
admiral, the admiral. He was a great leader. He sacrificed his life for his country, his family, and his friends. And I have nothing but respect and love for him for that. I saw it. I saw everything that happened to him during a period of time. I had my period of time with him. When I say period, that means dot, dash, date to when he passed. I was with him touring. I was with his mother. I was with his family. I know all of his children. I've met his brother. I've met his cousin Sledger. I know so much about him that a lot of people don't know of him as being a very family oriented individual. He
Hmm.
loved his mother. He loved his mother.
Yeah.
He loved his children. He loved his wife. He loved the most important things that made him so recognizable in the world, that because of the love that he had for his family, his
Mhm.
country, and his friends, which made him the person that he is today.
So in
That's
that
what it's
time,
all about.
how do you see Bob Marley like has a father with his children? He was like a good father. Like he was very lovely with them.
Some of the children didn't get to know him so well because he toured. Bob he worked all the time.
Hmm.
And a lot of the girls that had his children, the women that had his children, were not around because we were always on the road. He was always financially taking care of everything. Like there's only but so much a father can do when it
Yeah.
comes to, you've got 10, 11, 12 kids, that means you got to go to work. And that's all we ever did was work.
That's something that a lot of fans don't understand. Like, as you say, he was working for his kids, right? For his children, his family, right? He
From
was
day
working
one when
hard,
you were born,
like
every single
us,
one,
right? Like everybody, right?
and
Have a family.
every single one of the children that is connected to Bob Marley are very, very comfortable today. And God bless that. God bless
Yep.
the child that has God bless the child that has its own. God bless them.
Hmm.
Their father made sure that not one of his seeds would sit on the sidewalk and beg bread from anybody.
So just say, yeah, and that is true. See now the whole money they're making with these movies and just millions and millions every year. So that was because of Bob, because of his father. So right.
It was because of Peter, Bob, and Bunny, the
Hmm.
three men, and the band who produced everything.
Yep. Yep.
Because, he wasn't Bob Dylan. He he concentrated on a band at all times. If you listen to Bob's recordings like One Cup of Coffee and Simmer Down and all that stuff, if you just put him on the track by itself, that's one thing. And if he had an acoustic guitar to sing along with it, like Redemption Song, that
Hmm.
would have that would have gone but so far. Bob had the perfect production team. He had the perfect musicians from the beginning to his passing. Everything was perfect. And unfortunately, whatever that is perfect, there's always a negative with a positive.
Hmm.
And so, unfortunately, it wasn't equally or fairly distributed, the success. Because when they made a decision that, okay, now it's not the band anymore, it's not Peter, Bob, and Bunny anymore, it's just Bob, things begin to change.
Yep.
And maybe for the financially better, let's say,
Hmm.
but spiritually, when you make such an immense change of the reality of what was made, then it doesn't become real anymore.
Yep.
Once you start taking people off of music, once you start recording the same songs that we recorded and then change the algorithms of what was made naturally,
Hmm.
I don't, it's not that I don't agree with it. It's the fact that I disagree with it because it's just not right. And that's like taking the Jackson 5 and taking Michael off of everything,
Hmm.
or taking all the Jackson 5 off of it and just leaving Michael by itself. And what do you have? You have Michael, but you don't have Michael and Jackson 5. You
Hmm.
have the Jackson 5, but you don't have Michael. So when you put everything together, it's perfect.
Yep.
It's perfectly organized.
And that never happened.
Unfortunately, because of the lawyers, the management, and the accounting, even the children, even Rita, they stressed Rita. They stressed everybody. Those guys, they were gangsters. They were
So
financial.
Marley was kind of, they were giving like pretty much the whole money to Bob, and then Bob give it to the band, to their own studio family. It was more like that, right?
No, it was more like the manager would take all the money and know how much money came in first. His manager, when the artist is supposed to know what's going on financially first. Don Taylor would take all of Bob's money, divide it for Bob, take his percentage, and give everybody else, including his band, the crumbs, like bird food. You know, Don Taylor got the filet mignon.
Yeah, the big piece.
Yeah, and then he would make sure that his artist was satisfied, but at the same time, you had the lawyers, accountants, Bob had major finances. Like after a tour, there was so much money that Bob had to pay back for the bus, the plane, the trains, the hotel. Island Records and Chris Blackwell was not giving Bob anything as tour support. They may have advanced him, but after the tour was over, they took everything back that he had gained. So he was trying every year he was trying to catch up. And then the record started selling at a rapid rate where they couldn't stop him anymore because his production, his singer and songwriting was so prolific that he was going to get paid with or without those thieves,
Yeah.
all those gangsters that well, he had a bad publisher. He had bad publishing people that took advantage of his publishing. People had percentage of Bob's publishing that didn't deserve it. Bob deserved to have his merchandise and his publishing for him. Now, if he had had these things earlier in his life, it would have been so much better for him because Bob worked so hard. He never had an opportunity to enjoy his family, his life, and everything that he had achieved because he suffered. And all the Wailers suffered. They killed Carly. They killed Peter Tosh. They stressed Bob and they murdered him. They shot his wife. They shot his manager. They threatened to kill everybody. How are you supposed to operate under these conditions?
And he was still working so hard and making great music. So
He
what a
got Michael Manley elected. Bob was a politician. He was one of the strongest artists ever in the history of Jamaica Music Society. You got Jimmy Cliff and a lot of Harry Belafonte and you know Prince Buster. You got all these incredible figures. But in terms of what Bob Marley and the Wailers have done on behalf of tourism and the political views that Jamaican people have been more successful because they were looked on as not as servants and slaves anymore when Michael Manley became the prime minister.
how,
As
so how about Marley
Michael
held
Manley said, Michael Manley said that we will not crawl on our knees, but we will walk upright on our feet because he wasn't going to bow down to the Western Hemisphere and give them everything and tell them that Michael and Castro couldn't be close in the Western Hemisphere between Jamaica and Cuba. It was a Pan African alliance that they had together
Mhm.
about all the black people, all the black Latinos, you know, that were in Cuba and all the Cubans that were in Jamaica. It was together. And
so
that was because of
so
Michael Mann
Bob
and
Marley
Bob
yeah.
and
So
Bob Marley.
yeah. So he was like kind of helping Michael Marley in many ways to do all of that.
He made Michael prime minister. Bob Marley single-handedly made Michael Manley prime minister again. When he did the concert on the government lawn and they threatened him, when Bob accepted Michael Manley's
Concert, right? Like
when he accepted the concert, he put his life in jeopardy. That's when they came to Hope Road and tried to assassinate every single Wailers. Not just Bob, not Don, Rita, everybody. They shot at every band member. I wasn't there, but I know I was at Miss Booker's house.
yeah,
At Booker's house
yeah.
when I
So this attack wasn't from Michael Marley. It wasn't from him. It wasn't from the other guys, right? Because it was the
it
opposition, right?
it was from the opposition. Everybody knows that.
So why there's like this crazy theories if the attack was coming from CIA between one PNP, PLP was coming from different angles, the attack a lot of nowadays nobody knows. Like they just say, well, it was because of this, because of that, but no one knows like it was because of he held. PNP, Michael Marley to win it. There's that. Is that it can be that like that, right? But
That's
why
why.
people still looking for answers, right? If you're saying that,
Because what they don't know is that Eddie Siaga and George Bush Sr. Went to school together. They were roommates at Harvard,
wow.
and George Bush Sr. is a very major figure in America.
Mhm.
The Bush family is one of the strongest families, like Rothschild. This power,
The
this
Bush
type.
family.
Yes, and Bob fought against wanting to keep Jamaica how Jamaica should be for the future, and he fought and won because he got Michael elected again, and the Jamaicans wanted Michael to be prime minister again, not the opposing party. Not to say that Ed Siaga wasn't uh, the one to be the prime minister, and I'm from the outside. I'm from the west. I'm from America, from the
Hmm.
western. Who am I to make my judgment? The judgment I'm making is what I saw in the person that I was standing next to, which was Bob Marley. I told Bob that those guys were going to come and assassinate him. He told me to tell them to come. That's how proud he was and how he wasn't afraid. But unfortunately, it didn't work. It shouldn't have never happened
Yeah.
because these type of things, when you get yourself involved in politics and you're a musician and an artist, it only brings trouble.
Yeah.
Look at same thing happened to Che Guevara. Look at Che. Che was he was a revolutionary, and he paid the price.
Yeah. Same as Marley in some way. Like they tried to right shut him down.
Um, Music and politics doesn't work. Just to stay away from all the political views of those people who have power